It's been said that the worst decision is indecision. So, how comfortable are you at making decisions quickly? Let's have ourselves a pocket sized pep talk because I've got someone here who has literally created a playbook on making better decisions faster. Now, who doesn't need that?
A Pocket Sized Pep Talk, the podcast that can help energize your business and your life with a quick, inspiring message. Now, here's your host, Rob Jolles.
Today's guest, Paul Epstein, is a former high-level executive for multiple NFL and NBA teams. He's a best-selling author and renowned thought leader. He transformed struggling franchises, founded the San Francisco 49ers Talent Academy, and inspires companies like Amazon and Disney as an award-winning keynote speaker. With his Win Monday community podcast and upcoming book, Better Decisions Faster, Paul continues to make a significant impact, and he's going to do that today. Nice to meet you, Paul, and welcome to the show.
Oh, fired up to be here, Rob. Let's rock and roll.
Let's rock and roll. I don't know if you know this, but my early days as an insurance agent, my nickname was the Rocket. So we're going to rock, hit, and roll. All right. So, boom. It's good to have you here. And by the way, a hearty congratulations on the new book. Let's just start there. When's the release date on this book?
September 26th. So no pressure, but yeah, it's look, it came from the heart and soul. So I know we'll unpack it today, but Better Decisions Faster, Unshakable Confidence when you need it most.
Perfect. And for those of you who lost track of these things, that book is, I went over there and looked at it. That book's on Amazon right now. You can pre-order that book right now. Don't worry, Paul, I'll do the heavy lifting on these things. And trust me when I tell you this, it's really important to authors to get those pre-orders. It changes the algorithms. Amazon really starting to like that book. We create some momentum behind that book. So let's get rolling. And but go jump and take a look at that book if this podcast makes sense. And don't wait for September. Pre-order it now. So we'll get it going. Okay. Now, I've been doing some snooping around on this book, and I found that you have a process to drive purposeful action, as you call it. And it's if I got it right, the head plus the heart equals the hands equation. All right. Walk me through that one.
Oh, I love it. So this is the how-to of the book. This is the application. So for everyone listening in, if life is a game of decisions and we want to make them better and faster, and we want to step into the most critical forks in the road with greater confidence, that's what the book is about. But the how-to, because if I left it there, Rob, and everybody listening in, you still don't know how to apply it on Monday morning, I should say. Well, so you're telling me that decisions are critical. Check. I agree with that. All right, Paul and Rob. So you're telling me to audit my past, my decisions about health and relationships and career and all the other important categories of life. Yeah. If I show me the quality of those decisions, and it'll tell you the quality of life. So that checks off. But if the story ended there, how do you apply it? So for me, I really did an audit of my worst decisions, my best decisions, my decisions where I lacked confidence, my decisions where I had optimal confidence. And as you start to study the data, and then you start to learn and coach others in a process, the end result is now called the head, heart, hands equation. So if I could give a 30 to 60 second masterclass, by definition, head is your mindset. Heart is your authenticity. And hands are the action that either follows or doesn't follow. So the equation is head plus heart equals hands. So in other words, to decide whether to use your hands, whether to take action or not, there's two checkpoints, your head and your heart. So head, do I think it's a good idea? Heart, do I feel it's a good idea? And when they're both on board, green light to take action.
Yeah.
When neither is on board, that's a red light. No action or stop doing it. And then that messy middle, when only one of the two, your head or your heart is on board, that's a yellow. So I wrote the book, Better Decisions Faster, so we can populate our life with more green lights, head and heart fully ignited. Now that we're aware, stop running reds. And last but not least, here's the playbook for how to navigate and conquer that messy middle of yellow. So that's better decisions faster. And that's the head, heart, hands equation.
Well, you see, I want to tell you something, folks. That's not easy to do. There's the writing of the book, and then there's learning how to get it into 60-second, 80-second sound bites like that. I got to tell you, congratulations, A, because you can articulate it, but B, you're dealing with a corporate trainer on this side. And what always scares me is the motivational and inspirational kind of book that says, boy, if you can do this, the world will be your oyster, man. And we're moving through the book going, okay, you had me at hello. Now tell me how. The fact that you have a repeatable, predictable process in place means that those who are reading this book can measure what they're doing, can follow a process. Nice thing about a process is, you know when you're on it, you know when you're off it. So I think it's really great that you got a process. And just one more quick thing. I love the fact that you also have an eye to implementation, because a lot of times we learn these things, but we don't necessarily take it to the field. We don't implement. And, that's where training goes to die, quite frankly. So I think you've hit on both of them.
Yeah. And what's interesting about your background is we share that background. I was a trainer before I was a speaker. So for my 15 years in the sports industry, especially once I entered the positional leadership ranks, I was training all day, every day, sales teams, biz dev teams, massive $1 billion campaigns, massive expectations, opening new venues, all that stuff. And to your point, like A, nothing in life happens without action. And B, I think sometimes we can teach to our pet peeves. So what I mean by that is, one of my pet peeves of, let's say I go to an event and I get inspired and I feel like I leave ready to conquer the world and take over the world. And then bang, Monday hits. My inbox is flooded because I unplugged for a couple of days. My spouse, my kids, my partner, life happens. And then 1 or 2 weeks go by and I look back to that glorious event that inspired the heck out of me, and poof, it's a sugar high.
Right.
And that just kind of pisses me off a little bit, to the point where I said, that's not how I'm going to show up. I'm not going to be the speaker that delivers an eventual sugar high. I'm going to give folks a tactical way that is accessible so they can win Monday. Like, I am literally just about these bite-sized day-to-day decisions and actions, something that no matter whether you're feeling high on life right now, or maybe you're in a little bit more of a broken spot, which both are temporary, I just meet you where you are and say, let's lock arms, let's meet at the 50. And this is one thing that we can do better and different on Monday. That's really how I roll through life. And that's where I think, again, I sell toward my pet peeve. I'm never going to create that feeling that I hate personally when I'm the consumer, when I'm up there on stage or on a podcast like this.
Yeah. It's interesting. I didn't know that you had a background in training, but
yeah,
I'm going to be, I'm going to be a little bit of a homer here, but I swear, I think trainers who also know how to sell make the best authors, because we know how to put things together that go a little bit deeper than inspiration. And there's always an element. It's hard for a sales guy to turn it off. In other words, you want to see a movie? Yeah, I got a movie for you. I don't do it on purpose, but but we really offer a casual opinion. So there's some punch, there's some bite to what we have to say. So when you take that and you have the ability to know how to basically teach information, which is what a good book does. Obviously, we'll entertain you, we'll motivate you, we'll inspire you. But I don't think it's a coincidence that some of the best authors come from the pit, as we call it in the training world, right?
Amen.
All right. Yeah. Yep. All right. So let's stay on this head, heart, hands just a little bit longer. How do you transfer that over to the decision-making process? How do we use that? So I've got that. We got to stay out of the yellow, go to the green. Now, where does the faster part come in?
Well, the faster is, tell me what decision, what fork in the road you're stuck at. Tell me the fork in the road that you're challenged. Tell me that fork in the road that's freezing you, that's paralyzing you, or there's decision fatigue or overwhelm and you don't know where to go or how to get. So all these things, which are very human by nature, like Rob, you're going to struggle with this just like I am, just like everybody listening. And we all struggle to make big decisions. But here's why. As I did the research, because here's a fun fact for everyone listening in. The average adult makes 35,000 decisions in a day. 35,000. Okay. And now look, the majority are, of course, on autopilot. We don't have the mental capacity nor the energy to process 35,000. So turn left in the driveway, brush your teeth. You don't need the head, heart, hands equations for 99% of your daily decisions. But for those critical forks in the road, like, you know how in sports they have MVPs, most valuable players? Right. I say use the equation for your MVDs, your most valuable decisions. That's when you use the head, heart, hands equation. So if you're listening and you're struggling or challenged with a decision right now, today, in this moment, you're at this fork in the road. Where the faster comes in is, I don't promise you to get to the end line of the decision. I promise that I can show you a color, green, yellow, or red. You will know that color within seconds of applying the head, heart, hands equation. So again, green, that's instant. If you want to take action immediately, go for it. Red, stop taking action or don't do it. Green and red are almost instant. Yellow, which is where the larger percentage of our critical decisions lie, when either our head or our heart isn't on board. That's why I wrote the book, because that's not going to be a fast outcome, but at least now you can identify it as a yellow light. And now that I know it's yellow, which one's on board, my head or my heart? Because when my heart's on board, that's something where you want to stay in the fight. That's a yellow that I would encourage you to be patient enough for your head to, maybe you need to untangle a limiting belief. Maybe something's getting in the way, right? I encourage folks that have their heart on board to stay in the fight, because you can't fake heart. It's your truth or it's not. It's authentic or it's not. So when you're in, when your heart is in, don't mess that up. But the opposite, I think that yellow can be more deadly than a red. A couple examples could be, let's say you're leading a team. And I used to lead big sales teams. And, let's say hypothetically, there might be a little ego on that team. Okay. And so, but they're your top producer. They sell a ton of widgets, but maybe they're not so good in the locker room. Maybe they're not the best team member, but you got to hit quota. So your head says, keep them, but your heart knows they're not a keeper. And that is the classic definition and example of the bad yellow. The yellow that you hang on to for too long. It's eventually not going to work out, whether it's a relationship or a person or these New Year's resolutions that are all head and no heart. And you wonder why they don't see Gen 10 or Feb 1. That's why. Yeah. That's why there was no deeper heart-based reason to create the commitment and the goal. And so those yellows, the time that drifts away and you'll never get back, I believe when the head is on board and the heart is not, those yellows are more deadly than a red.
It's interesting. I've never really heard the two put together, and I can see how each one could cripple the other if they're out of alignment there. It's very interesting. I studied one time, I worked with people in career transition, and I actually studied procrastination, because I always thought procrastination was laziness. I mean, a form of, and it is not. It's people who procrastinate are not lazy. They're just prioritizing things in a different way, things that they want that are a little bit more enjoyable. It might not be quite as distasteful, but they're keeping that activity going. They're full. They'll finish the day and go, I can barely breathe. Yeah, but you didn't really get at the stuff that you needed to get at. And that sort of turned a light on to me.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
And can I challenge you, Rob, on that? And
sure,
I don't mean challenge in the way that I disagree, but now that I hear you say that, which I don't disagree with anything you just said. Here's how I think the head, heart, hands equation would apply to procrastination.
Okay.
My gut feel as I heard you explain that is, if it was a green light, you wouldn't procrastinate. My gut feel, like that test that you put off studying. Oh my God, if ever there were yellows and reds on how I think a lot of procrastination lives in yellow and red. Yeah, I really do. If it was a green, you're so compelled, you're inspired. You're like, how could I not act on this? I think it's the yellow and or the red that maybe say, well, there's a logical reason why I'm going to put this off. So in other words, it's not a green. And, again, I'm just getting creative with the explanation, but I do think that the two can connect for sure.
Yeah. Well, I'm totally agree with you. The thing is that some things, you run a business, I run a business. We're both professional speakers. We actually have a lot in common. There's certain things about our day that we know we need to do.
Mhm.
I don't necessarily enjoy doing them as much as some of the other things that I really should be doing, but they're not necessarily prioritized above it. And
I
that's
got
where
you.
my yellow and greens are conflicting. I have no doubt that it's the most important thing that I'm avoiding, but I con myself into believing that I maybe in your language I can put some greens on some other things that aren't quite as distasteful. But that's
Yeah.
me. Yeah.
No, it's so cool that you're saying this. And by the way, I'll throw something else out. You said earlier the word process
Yeah.
a few minutes ago, and I want to call that out because I'll throw probably a very surprising disclaimer out to your audience right now. I'm not wired to be a process guy. So as soon as you're like, oh my gosh, this guy created an equation for decisions, he must be like super tight and super wired for process and system and operations. I am the exact opposite, actually. I prefer casual and loose and just let me wing it and let me trust me. That's how I'm wired. But what I realized is when I started to audit the quality of my decisions and the actions I did take or didn't take, and I really just simplified life, I'm like, you know, what's gotten me in a lot of trouble is when I haven't had a process. And when I realized the stakes and the consequence and the value of our biggest decisions, I'm like, how could I not create a process for something that's so important? Now, it has to be something A, that I can use, and B, that I can share with the world and they could use it. And it should be simple. But remember, simple is not easy. I don't think that the head, heart, hands equation is easy because simple can be hard. Just because I tell you it's a green, yellow, or red, or you figure that out on your own, that doesn't make life easy. But at least now you land on a color and it gives you more clarity. And I call them the 4 C's of decision making. Clarity leads to confidence, leads to conviction, leads to courage. You don't start at courage. My definition of courage is standing tallest when fear and risk are highest. So for everyone listening in, if you feel fear, like me, like Rob, like everybody, that's normal. If we're paranoid or paralyzed sometimes by risky situations, again, that's your brain doing its job. That's normal. So when I say be courageous and stand tall when fear and risk are high, it's because you started at a point of clarity. You know who you are. You know where you want to go. You know why you want to go there. And then that builds confidence as you consistently are clear. And then consistent confidence leads to conviction in your daily actions. And if you can just multiply these things out, you end up being a very courageous person, but it started with clarity and confidence.
Yeah. Oh, it's again something I think we both share. When I take the personality profiles, be it Myers-Briggs or DISC or Inscape or what, there's lots of them. I always bomb out on the analytical side. I'm much more social, somewhat dominant. However, if I take one in business, the way I handle my business, I actually do okay on the analytical side because we can't survive without it. Or we wind up in the wrong town on the wrong day. There's you have to. It's sort of like exercising a muscle that is a little atrophied. But you catch me on a weekend, I'm anything but process oriented. A matter of fact, I want to get as far away from it as I possibly can.
Me too.
But in business, when I step on a stage, when I sit in front of a client, you've got some impressive clients there. You step in front of Amazon or Disney, and I know Disney pretty well. They want to make sure whatever you're talking about sticks. And I love that that reference you had. I hope you don't mind. I may write a blog about it. I love the term you used, a sugar high. You're calling back words of mine. I'm calling back words of yours that really stuck with me because immediately that resonated with me. That's exactly what I don't want to be when I walk in front of a room or sit down and consult with a client. And I'm hoping that book. Well, I'm not hoping. I'm getting from the author himself that we'll give you a little sugar in there. Don't worry, but we're going to back it up with some moves that can be made, that can be measured.
Yeah, sugar plus action. And what's really neat about what you said too, Rob, is so whether it's about you, whether personal or professional, Rob, whether it's about Paul or anybody and everybody listening in right now, I don't know a lot of folks in life that are equal parts logic and emotion. Like normally there's a lean, right? For me, I'm definitely heavier emotion for sure. I am more emotion than logic. And guess what? I know countless people, and I could almost look at an org chart and say, Hey, in the sales department, you're going to have way more emotion. In anything that's finance, accounting, quantitative, like more logic, strategy. Got it. Like I'm not knocking it. What I love is it's not head or heart equation. It's head plus heart. So I created a process to unexpose your blind spots. So if you're heavy on heart, cool. You got to use your head to have a green light. You got to. And if you're heavy on analyze, okay, I'm going to be the guy that's going to say, check in with your heart because the equation requires it. So we all have blind spots. What a beautiful process when it takes the temptation of just leaning into your comfort zone, which is heavier logic or emotion. And now I'm saying it's not an or, it's a yes and logic and emotion.
Got it.
Yeah.
Now, I just mentioned those assessments. I've got a couple of consultants that I work with that provide the personality pieces. Is there an assessment that somebody can take of yours, to figure out where I am on my head, my heart, et cetera?
Absolutely. Yeah. So when we look at our head, heart, hands, I think those are all the building blocks of how we build unshakable confidence. So show me a healthier mindset, show me a healthier heart set, show me somebody that's taking purposeful action, which is really the head, heart, hands in a nutshell. And that's a person with maximum confidence. So I created a confidence quiz, and it's a free gift from me to your entire audience. B, it can be found on my website, paulepsteinspeaks.com. I'm sure we'll put it in the show notes, but head over to paulepsteinspeaks.com, main nav bar confidence quiz. You can't miss it. And the beauty is in less than 5 minutes, you will know your exact confidence score, 1 to 100. And then when your score is emailed to you, there's also a resource, again, it's free, on the 12 keys to build unshakable confidence. Because to me, confidence is like a dimmer switch. It can go up, it can go down. We've got good days, we've got bad days, and that's human and that's normal. But the confidence quiz is what gives you at least today's data point, and then it gives you tools and resources to elevate that.
And ain't that the truth about how confidence can come and go, particularly for the salespeople who are listening to us right now? One of the tricks of the trade for me is really trying to take people mentally, almost like method acting, to times where they've just nailed 5 or 6 rooms or clients in a row and they're going into the 7th one. What did it feel like? Call that back, draw it back, close your eyes, open the door, go pick up the phone, talk to the client now. Because when they got knocked down 4 or 5 losses in a row, they're just shoulders are down and they can't get out of that character. They're stuck. So it's I was a point guard. I would get a little gun shy when I missed my first couple shots, and I'd hit the boards hard. I'd play great defense. You love my assists, but I finally ran into a good coach who really just said, Jollis, you can't miss your first 2 shots and then get shy from the rim. Keep shooting.
Well, in football, they call that the cornerback mentality, right? Yeah. So they're the guys that are guarding the receivers or defending the receivers. And let's say you get burned for a touchdown, next play up. Like whether you made a good play or a bad play, it's over. And actually, that's cool that you brought up sports because look, 15 years in the NFL and NBA, exposed to a lot of players. And what's not lacking in professional sports are gifts, talents, and skills. Every single person is the top 0.1% in the world at that craft. They're the best basketball players in the world, the best football players, the best baseball, hockey, soccer, whatever it is. So if they're not short on that, why do they have really good games and then have really bad games? Their gifts, skills, talents, and abilities did not change. It was their confidence. And just like a baseball player can get in their head, and why do you think they go on an 8-game streak and their batting average was 350 and now they're batting 150 for an 8? That's not an accident. That's a confidence problem. And so then a guy like me would step into that situation. And this is what I do in a lot of private coaching work. And you would say, maybe there's some mindset blocks that we need to tackle. So that would be a head challenge. That would be a head gap. Your confidence score in your head might be lower because something was tangled in that cobweb, right? Maybe there was a heart thing. And sometimes a person's emotional, the way they show up, maybe. And guess what? It doesn't mean that shame on them. What if they had something tragic happen in their personal life? We're not robots. We're not machines. We don't just shut that off when we show up at work. So what if their heart was in a different place. And now all of a sudden they're playing 10% lesser than their capacity. And in the NFL, that 10% will get you smoked.
Right.
Right. So anyways, I just kind of want to poke it like a real example of you. You said sales, and then you mentioned your point guard. I've been around the world's elite performers and highest achievers, and they have confidence problems. So if you get a confidence quiz score, and if for whatever reason it's not what you want, no worries. That's your data point today. The key is, how do you elevate it over time? It's like a good stock with a company. There's going to be jagged ups and downs. The key is it going up and to the right over time?
Excellent. Let's stay on that for a second. I'm just curious about your experience in the NFL. I'm a lifelong Washington, whatever we are. We'll call them Commanders this week.
Sure.
The over-under on how long that's going to stay is 4 more months. But anyway, I digress. I'm just curious. Do you know anything about some of the owners, because they're leaders? Is it a coincidence that some of these franchises, I'm not a Steelers fan, but that's a franchise that is always good. Sometimes they're great, but they just seem to be, there's consistent. If I ran a business, I wanted to achieve what the Steelers have achieved. I wanted to achieve what the Chiefs have achieved. We had a leader that wasn't so good here. It rhymes with Snyder. But do you notice any, as you're working on this, did you pick up any intel on them and learn 100%. Some lessons, good or bad?
Yeah, I know a lot of good and bad, and I won't pick on your friends over there in Washington. Let me use actually where I started my career as a good example. So I worked as an entry-level sales guy. This is circa 2005. Okay. I worked for not the LA Lakers, but the team on the other side of the hallway. So while Kobe and Shaq were winning championships, I worked for the redheaded stepchild of the building. We were called by ESPN the worst brand in sports. Then my second week on the job selling the LA Clippers, the front cover of Sports Illustrated said, worst franchise in sports history. Ooh. Now, if you know anything about basketball in that time in history, whether you're a Clipper fan or not, trust me, I wish we had more of them back then. It would have made my life a lot easier. But it wasn't just because we were losing a historic amount of games. It was an owner that eventually, let's put it this way, you can Google the name of former Clippers owner and see exactly why he's no longer the owner. And just like your Washington football team has it. So here's my formula for how I think about the situations we're describing. And it all comes back to confidence as well. I always say the formula is, show me a person that consistently puts their values in action. I'll show you a confident person. So another way to describe this as a trainer, let's put our training hat on, confidence equals values times action. The multiplication is how consistently you do it. So consistently putting your values in action, values times action equals confidence. When I have been, whether I worked for the team, whether I have clients, and often they don't stay clients because I'm like, hey, folks, like, we're not truly committed to people development, leadership development, culture transformation. You hired me for this. I'm not seeing the actions. So 60-day notice. If this doesn't change, you're wasting your money. And I'm okay getting fired from the wrong clients because I'm like, your values are just words on the wall. That's all they are. You're not living it. You're not eating it. You're not breathing it. You don't think everyone in the company knows that? Of course they do. And if you didn't pay them, you would have no company. So therefore, like, I really get into it. And that's why I think the right clients appreciate my perspective, because I'm like Zoom is a client of mine. Before COVID, before Zoom became a household name, kind of like it's a verb, right? Like Google is a verb. Now Zoom is a verb because of the age we live in. Well, I worked with them years before they blew up. I worked with them when maybe they were the number 4 player in the video space, video conferencing space. They were not the big player. But when they said delivering happiness as their mission, I got off the elevator and I felt it. I felt it. When I was behind closed doors with their leaders, and I expected the door to be closed because we were going to have a private conversation about their people and their culture and all that. They didn't close the door. They were talking about people 10 feet outside of that door, just sharing raw truths. A lot of it positive, but they were also very open and vulnerable about the challenges and about where they're struggling. And I'm like, this is beautiful. Yeah. This is like the professional family you want to be a part of. Yeah. The best personal families are also the same way. I love you. I'm going to give you a bear hug. And if I love you, I'm going to let you know what I think, not because I'm trying to be nice, but because I love you. Right. And so like these kind of fundamental, like what's the problem with the Clippers of back then? What was the problem with the Washington, whatever we call them, the football team? It's that they weren't, from a leadership perspective, they weren't putting their values in action. They might have said we stand for X, but they did Y. And you lose trust. And once you lose trust, it's really tough to regain it. So that's why, like, when I try to come in, it's like, hey, do what you say you're going to do what you say you stand for. And that's ultimately a path to greater success.
Well said. Really well said. And, some of the greatest managers I had were the ones that communicated good, bad, sideways. You knew where you stood with them, and you never questioned it. The worst managers, the worst leaders that I've ever associated with, you never really knew where you stood, and it creates paranoia. And different people are wired different ways. Some people can handle that, and some just terminate. They'll just leave. Not every day is good news, but when we have trust and confidence in our leaders that there is open and fair communication, I think it's one of the building blocks of a great organization. I think you nailed it. One other thing, you mentioned the Clippers. Again, our Wizards have not exactly been stellar the last 30 years, but at one point, I don't know whether it was 10 years ago, because the Clippers have been good for a while now. You did a good job.
Yeah, much better. I did not catch those years. They're much better now.
But I'll tell you how bad the Wizards slipped. At one point, I remember reading in the Washington Post that we were being referred to as the Clippers of the East. And I actually went, oh my God, it's the worst thing you could call us. That was used as an attack on our franchise. But that tells you what, to your point, almost the historic level that the Clippers had reached, and you don't want to be that. And I remember reading it, I couldn't get it out of my head going, we can't be that bad. Well, wait a minute, how many years has it been now? But yep, it stuck with me.
Yeah.
All right, we'll bring it in for a landing here. One last question, and I'll start wrapping this up. I like to try and get things boiled down a bit, and we talked about implementation. So let's say somebody's driving in a car, taking a nice walk right now and thinking, oh, I love this conversation. What's one thing that they could do just from this conversation, from the book they're going to pre-order, that would move the dial a little bit for them?
The simplest answer is, for any decision that you deem critical or that you deem is high value, apply this head, heart, hands equation. And I want to challenge you, because a lot of folks might hear a high value decision and they think big picture, relationship in or out. And it's just something that feels permanent. I actually want to reposition to say, if it's important to you based on what your greater goals are, use the equation. In other words, people joked with me. I was actually being interviewed the other day, and they were joking, saying, Paul, like, if my wife is thinking about Burger King or McDonald's, should she use the head, heart, hands equation? And obviously they were saying it tongue in cheek. And clearly I would default to, no, you don't need an equation for that. But then I jumped in and said, and this is actually in the book, I use this example. What if you were on a major health plan? What if you made some big commitments? What if your green light decision made you apply this drastic change in your health? Well, then, is it crazy for your next DoorDash order to really think about, is this a green light decision, or is it a yellow, or is it a red? I don't think it's crazy, because it feeds up to a greater goal that you said was significant. So maybe if you don't have any bigger health picture goals, and that's fine, then Burger King or McDonald's, you do you. I personally think Burger King has better fries, I'll say McDonald's has better fries, and chicken McNuggets are a wonderful thing. Okay. But DoorDash, that's kind of where I say it half joking, but I also say it in the point of, I really do think that this equation can change people's lives, because, even in my space now, where I talk to all types of folks, and let's say I was talking to a meeting planner. True story. I was talking to a meeting planner. She booked me for a really big multi-thousand person event. And it started as a business conversation. And then she says, hey, I see you have a new book coming out. And I gave her kind of the green, yellow, red. And she says, that's interesting. My daughter, who's one of the top lacrosse players in high school right now, she's getting recruited by all these top universities, and she's really struggling with the decision. Every school looks shiny to her, and she's really struggling to differentiate. And she said, I'm actually going to share this head, heart, hands equation with my daughter. And lo and behold, I got an email about 2 hours later, and she said, thank you. She has a crazy amount of clarity. She knows exactly where she wants to go. She says of the 10 offers, there is a single green light, and it was all because of the equation. So again, I think we can use this in big ways and small ways, but I encourage everyone starting now. Don't wait for Monday. Starting now, apply it. Head plus heart equals hands, and just go populate your life with as many green lights as possible.
Heck yeah. And we can drop by the website, take the assessment. You called an assessment. Am I missing?
Quiz. Yeah. So
Quiz,
at paulepsteinspeaks.com. Yeah. The confidence quiz. That's exactly where that's the starting point.
Yeah. But oh, by the way, you didn't lose me on that example either. As a sales trainer, everyone wants to look at big things. I refer to it as ring work. I think there's lots of little things that we actually apply our process to. And if nothing else, it makes it a little easier when we get to some of the bigger ones. So I don't save pieces that I like real well for big decisions or things like that. I try and stay in shape a little bit. I'll use methods like that, just for clarity. So,
and Rob,
surprised.
One final perspective to share with everybody. I like to focus on resources of really high value, and especially things that we can't generate more of it. And so the one thing that comes to mind is time. Time is finite. TikTok yesterday is gone. Tomorrow, today will be gone. You never get time back. So everyone listening knows time is of high value. The question, the decision is, how are you spending it? What are you prioritizing? What are you investing? So I would just challenge all of us. You ask, what can we do immediately? Put a pie chart of where you're spending your time. Bucket it out. Oh, I'm spending 2 hours on this, half an hour on that, 3 hours on this, 5 hours. Cool. All good. And then you can look at a sliver of that pie and say, is this a green sliver, a yellow sliver, or a red sliver? And don't judge yourself. Don't kill. Oh, I got a lot of yellow and red. It's a horror. No. That's where you are today. No worries. Over time, build a plan and be like, how do I lessen the red? How do I get more clarity on the yellow? And how do I increase my green? So I think that's a kind of cool exercise of like time pie chart your life out and do a green, yellow, red.
Yeah. It makes complete sense. When we create objectives in training, for instance, a lot of times when I'm working with trainers and they go, well, I established an objective and I didn't meet my objective, I'm shaking their hand and going, yeah, but you were able to answer the question now, weren't you? And so you know where to put your effort into. What if I asked you that question? You said, I don't really know. Now we've truly failed. So I don't mind succeeding or failing. I want to be able to measure it and be conscious of what I'm doing. As they say, I don't want to kind of wander through life as an unconscious incompetent, not knowing what I don't know. With tools like you described, at least we can begin to measure what we're doing. And I like the fact you put in there, let's not beat ourselves up whether we're successful right out of the gate or not. Let's just commit to trying to get a measurement in place. The rest will come.
Yep.
Outstanding.
Success and failure is the old language. Look at life as success and learning, right? That's all it is.
Yeah.
That's all it is. Success and learning.
Well, I've enjoyed the heck of it. All right. Tell me one more time, how do people get a hold of you?
paulepsteinspeaks.com is the website. Please take that confidence quiz. It can be an absolute rocket booster for you. See, I used rocket for you, Rob, since you said that earlier, right?
Got my attention.
And then social, LinkedIn and Instagram, I'm most active. So if either of those platforms or both are your jam, then that's where you can find me as well.
Good. And I'm committing to you that, Paul, that I'm going to take that quiz.
Great.
And let's see how we do that thing, because I'm very curious. I'm also going to pre-order your book, just so you know. I don't actually accept books from publicists, mainly because as a fellow author, when I write your review, it's not verified. So I'm going to get in line, get that pre-order going, because I've got a couple of clients that are really kind of paralyzed with their decision-making. And I just think it's an outstanding idea. In any case, very grateful you gave us your time, learned a lot today, and I wish you nothing but success with the book, truly.
Thank you so much, Rob, from the heart, and fired up to continue the journey.
You bet. All right. Well, we'll do it again as well as we can next time, folks. Until then, stay safe.
Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed today's show, please rate and recommend it on iTunes, Outcast, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also get more information on this show and Rob at jollis.com.